Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
Abyss World. As Sumu's thoughts moved, these many high-level undead appeared together with his energy incarnation in the Abyss World, in the building complex above the Magic Mountain. On the square, Sumu's will returns to his own body, and the energy incarnation disappears quietly, just standing there. A divine might that lives alone in the demon god radiates from Sumu's body and spreads in all directions. The undead that appear here are all high-level undead, all undead that Sumu enslaved and subdued with his erosion talent. With the soul connection between the two, how can they not know that their lord has achieved a demon god? Excited, pride, respect, worship. Next moment, all the emotions turned into a sentence. Congratulations to the Lord for achieving the devil. Accepting the congratulations from his subordinates calmly, Sumu gestured for the high-level undead under his subordinates to disperse. He brought them into the abyss, not to accept congratulations, but to further enhance the strength of these high-level undead under his command. With the movement of Sumu's mind, the power of rules added, these high-level undead floated involuntarily and appeared in the air. Immediately after, the unique energy in the Abyss World, originating from Sumu's abyssal magic energy, formed huge energy vortexes under the control of Sumu and madly poured into their bodies. These undead were originally just pure undead. But the Abyss World does not only contain the undead. Endless Abyss magic installation. The breath of the endless abyss pours in. These high-level undead are also undergoing tremendous changes, from the pure undead race to the direction of the abyss monster, the original species of the Abyss World. Abyss monsters can be said to be living creatures, and they are completely different from ordinary creatures. Because the abyss demonic energy and the abyss aura were originally a combination of a strong death aura and a dark aura. In this way, once these high-level undead were successfully transformed from pure undead into abyss monsters by Sumu, to a certain extent, they were also born to death and revived. Only, it did not change from an undead to a living being, but became an abyss monster. Pure abyss aura and abyss magic energy, naturally it is difficult to do this. But there is a connection between souls. When Sumu's purest abyss magic energy and abyss aura come to purify their bodies, erode their professions, and even integrate a little bit of the origin of the Abyss World for every high-level undead, the impossible becomes possible. This process is called kinship. When the transformation is completed, the abyss demons whose life forms have fundamentally changed are Sumu, the descendants of the abyss demon god. The family of the Dimension Demon God is like the patron of the God of Faith. The difference is, with the help of the power of his own world, the Dimensional Demon God can arbitrarily designate subordinates with huge potential as his followers. The God of Faith can only take believers who believe in himself and reach the level of saints as his patrons. Family members can communicate directly with the Demon God, and even if they are separated by countless worlds, they can borrow the power from the demon god. Caregivers can also communicate directly with their own gods, borrow the power of their own gods, and even let the will of the gods descend into their bodies. In essence, the servants of demon gods and the patrons of true gods are the same kind of existence. Only, there is still the possibility of betrayal by other demon gods' retinues, but Sumu's retinues, but there's absolutely no possibility of betrayal. So, in the process of transforming these high-level undead into their own relatives and into abyss demons, Sumu also directly gave these high-level undead the authority to control the power of the Abyss World to a certain extent. According to the words of many legends in the real world, these relatives who have been empowered by the ruler Sumu and can control the power of the Abyss World to a certain extent are the Lords of the Abyss. The difference is, the real Abyss Lord has his own small Abyss World, and he controls the power of the Abyss small world he owns. And these high-level undead, For the time being, the power of the Abyss world can only be controlled to a certain extent through the authority granted by Sumu. The final form of the Abyss world is an endless abyss that devours countless worlds and has countless layers of worlds. The Abyss world has just been born, and there is still an extremely long distance from becoming the final form of the Endless Abyss. And only at that time, Sumu can canonize the Abyss Lord at will. Only at that time, after being canonized by the Abyss Lord Sumu, there is an Abyss Lord blessed by the power of a small world immediately, who is the real Abyss Lord. Of course, it's too early to think about this. Even if it uses plane erosion to devour a plane or world, Sumu at this time will choose to integrate that plane or world into the Abyss world to raise the energy level of the Abyss world, rather than forming a second Abyss world. At least, Sumu is not ready to open up a second Abyss world until the main body of the Abyss world expands to its limit. After all, the energy level of the main body of the Abyss world is directly related to whether Sumu, the Abyss demon god, is a lower, middle, or upper god. Dispersing power rashly before he is absolutely invincible is an extremely stupid behavior in itself. But this time, Sumu was not for the canonization of the Abyss Lord, but to transform his family members. The breath of the Abyss poured in. Abyss magic installation. A little bit of the world origin of the Abyss world is also integrated, and it is integrated with the souls of these high-level undead, regardless of each other. When this is all done, conversion is complete. Since then, they are no longer pure undead, but Abyss demons. On the basis of retaining the characteristics and skills of its original race, it has sublimated a brand new race. For example, Agnes, she is still the Death Knight, the king of the Death Knight family, but the breath that pervades the body has changed from the breath of darkness and the breath of death to the breath of the Abyss. Live to death. Agnes at this time is resurrected in an alternative form. Of course, the same goes for other relatives. Augustine, Rhoda Monroe, the Banshee King, Nightmare Mirror, Argus, Willis, and more. Their occupations and abilities have not changed much, but have been resurrected in this alternative form. Of course, there is still a little difference. As Sumu's family, as the future Abyss Lord, the biggest change of these newly born Abyss demons is that, in addition to the original ability, there is an additional new ability, erosion. This kind of ability that comes from Sumu and the source power of the Abyss world cannot make them like Sumu by eroding the bones of the enemy to obtain attribute values, nor can they be like Sumu by beheading the enemy. Get free points. The only function of this ability is to let them constantly erode the enemy with the Abyss breath and make the enemy fall toward the Abyss. Abyss. Abyss Lord. As Sumu, the vassal of the Abyss Lord, it is necessary to have the ability to erode the enemy and make the enemy fall toward the Abyss, so that he can be called a veritable Abyss Lord. Zero asking for flowers. Is not it? This conversion was extremely successful. There are only 2 surprises. The first is Nefarian. This behemoth, which was originally a bone dragon, later became a ghost dragon, and after becoming a sanctuary, changed again. As one of the only non-humanoid races under the seat of Sumu, the other one is the bone demon spider. The growth of Nefarian's beast boss does not depend on the occupation template, but the attribute template. This attribute template also changed his race while advancing. So, after being transformed into his own family by Sumu and resurrected in an alternative form, Nefarian's race has changed again. The Nefarian Abyss Demon Dragon at this time. Abyss. Not only the undead can fall into the Abyss, eroded by the aura of the Abyss and the Abyss demonic energy, and gradually become an Abyss monster, living beings are more likely to fall into the Abyss, eroded by the Abyss aura and the Abyss demonic energy, and transformed into an Abyss demon. That is to say, from then on, Nefarian was no longer the only Abyss dragon under Sumu's command. This abyss demon dragon that has entered the sanctuary can completely capture the legendary giant dragons from the main material worlds, corrode them into the abyss demon dragon, and create a dragon headed by it in the abyss world. Abyss demon dragon race. In addition, now that it has been resurrected in an alternative way, whether it is Nefarian or the abyss dragon transformed later can reproduce. Legendary dragon. One of the most powerful native races in the game world. Scene. With the appearance of the Abyss world, with Nefarian becoming the Abyss Dragon, a race even more powerful than the legendary dragon, will also be born in the Abyss world. The same goes for the skeleton spider. The difference is, after the transformation of the skeleton demon spider, should it be called Abyss Demon Spider? Nefarian was the first surprise. Of course, it's a good surprise. Corolla is the second surprise. For a long time, Sumu had never found an opportunity for Corolla to advance to the sanctuary, which made Corolla stuck at the pinnacle of the legendary rank before entering the Abyss world. He only knows that this natural princess ghost can constantly absorb the breath of death and the breath of darkness to evolve. Even though her rank have been stuck at the peak of the legendary rank, Corolla's strength has never stopped growing. Now, transform Corolla into her own family. Sumu finally knew the opportunity of Corolla's advanced sanctuary. The opportunity of Corolla's advanced sanctuary was very obvious from beginning to end, but it was too easy for people to ignore it. The opportunity of Corolla's advanced sanctuary is to absorb enough and pure enough power. Abyss breath. Abyssal magic. Plus that little bit of the world origin of the Abyss world. When Sumu poured these energies into Corolla's body continuously and filled the hole in her body, the natural princess Mononoke naturally advanced. From the pinnacle of the legendary rank into the sanctuary homeopathy. In this way, the sanctuary under Sumu has already reached as many as 8. Death Knight Agnes. Desolate Knight Augustine. Rhoda Monroe, King of the Tombs. Abyss Dragon Nefarian. Ghost Queen Corolla. The Lich King Argus. Queen of Banshees. Dreamsicle. This power initially formed the prototype of the power of an abyss demon, Unreal Continent. City of the Dead. After completing the abyssization process, Sumu reprojected his plane projection into the city through the space beacon located in the City of Death. Energy infusion. In the way of being able to be an incarnation, he bypassed the restriction of a demon god in the main material world and returned to the world of Unreal Continent. It is not the body that comes. Appearing in the world in the form of an energy incarnation, Sumu can at most exert 1/10 of his body's combat power. But, as his level has risen to level 90, and as his 4-dimensional attributes have increased in the past year or so, even this 1/10 of the combat power is enough for Sumu to crush the Unreal Continent. On those sanctuaries. If coupled with this series of abilities possessed by the Dimension Demon God, it is still the unmatched undead master of the Unreal Continent. Nothing else. The power of space that can be unfolded in an instant allows Sumu to drag an existence that does not exceed the peak of the sanctuary into his world in an instant. And entering his own world is the true god, and he is enough to suppress him. But this time, he appeared in the Unreal Continent in the form of energy incarnation. Sumu did not intend to end the 3 major forces in this world. 633, Mechanical God of War and the City in the Sky. Sumu is very envious. It is one of the 3 artifacts of the Holy Light Empire, and it is also an opportunity for the gluttonous Insect King to advance to the sanctuary. Only, after achieving the Abyss Demon God, Sumu still has more important things to do. In comparison, destroying the 3 major forces will be relatively delayed. After all, there are still 2.5 years before the gods wake up. In the last 2.5 years, Sumu has to prepare for the awakening of the gods and the battle of the gods. After appearing in the City of the Dead, Sumu opened his own attribute panel. As he became an abyss demon, the undead camp he opened should also be transformed into an abyss camp. It's just that many players have not yet accepted the baptism of the Abyss and have not yet been transformed into the Abyss, and this transformation has not begun for the time being. On the faction panel, after several adjustments over the past year, the total contribution of the quest, the main quest of the faction, The Rise of the Undead, originally released by Sumu, has been adjusted to more than 90 million points by him. Now, he became the Abyss Demon God. The Abyss main city has already been built. The Lich, Bone Blacksmith, Dwarf Blacksmith, Corpse Witch Alchemist, etc., who are NPCs, have already completed the Abyss and settled in the main Abyss city and the 6 satellite cities. It's also time to incorporate players into their own dimensional world. Mind a Move adjusted the total number of contribution points on the faction panel to 100 million points. Subsequently, Sumu edited a message, selected all the players of the Undead camp as the sender, and sent that message out. Take time. The crisp system prompt sounded in the minds of all Undead camp players. Ding! The total contribution of faction main quest, The Rise of the Undead, reached 100 million points, and the 3rd stage task was completed. The Undead camp has been changed to the Abyss camp. The Abyss main city is open. The coordinates of the Realm Teleportation Array have been added. All players can directly teleport to the Abyss main city located in the Abyss world through the Boundary Teleportation Array located in the City of Doom, Anduin Continent, and the City of Death, Anreal Continent. A stone stirred up 1,000 waves. When this system prompt sounded in the minds of the Undead camp players one after another, the Undead camp players with a total number of more than 6 million suddenly boiled. The first reaction, they opened their own properties panel. It turned out that the faction contribution was more than 90 million, and I don't know when it has crossed the threshold of 100 million points. And the faction they originally joined, the Undead camp, was changed to the Abyss camp with the sound of the system prompt. Only, they need to enter the Abyss world through the Realm Teleportation Array and accept a baptism of abyssalization in the Abyss main city in order to officially change from a member of the Undead camp to a member of the Abyss camp. A time, countless players were in an uproar. Abyss. Abyss world. This vocabulary, which was just born to the Aborigines in the game world, is extremely familiar to these players from the real world. Oh, Abyss. Every player from the real world who doesn't know what the Abyss world and the Endless Abyss mean. So, when the content of the system prompts was clearly seen, these players were boiling. It turned out that the Undead camp was just a transition. It turned out that the camp they really joined was the Abyss camp. Compared with the Undead camp, the Abyss camp is obviously more powerful. Besides, the Abyss, as long as they understand this vocabulary in the real world, know that this is definitely one of the ultimate camps in the game world. If they join the Undead camp, they are still a little worried about whether the Undead camp will not be strong enough and be beaten by other camps in the later stage of the game. Then, after joining the Abyss camp, they will never worry about this problem. Who doesn't know that the Abyss is the biggest villain's strength? Just an endless abyss, how many planes and worlds have been swallowed, how many true gods and evil gods have been eroded and corrupted. Even the true gods can corrode. Who dares to doubt its power in the Abyss world where even the true god can fall? A time. Countless players rushed towards the Boundary Teleportation Array located in the City of Death and the City of Doom. Countless players wanted to enter the Abyss world and the Abyss main city as soon as possible. There are also countless players who want to try. What kind of feeling is Abyss? An announcement was made. The coordinates of the main city of the Abyss have been added to the teleportation array between the two worlds. Sumu's mission in the material world is completed. Next, he only needs to return to the Abyss world and wait for these players to be teleported to the Abyss main city in batches, and he will naturally complete the transition of the more than 6 million players from the Undead camp to the Abyss camp. As for whether there will be players who don't want to Abyss, Sumu is not worried. As long as you enter the Abyss world, the only options are to be abyssized or die. With the opening of the Abyss main city, whether it is the skill instructor representing the Undead Skill Library or the blacksmith representing the Undead Equipment Library, all will be transferred to the Abyss main city. The City of Doom, the City of the Dead, and the many cities under Sumu's control will retain only the most basic functional NPCs. Unless those players want to stagnate, they will no longer be able to enjoy a series of benefits such as the Skill Library and Equipment Library. Going to the Abyss world to accept the Abyss is their only choice. Mind a move. Sumu returns to the main city of the Abyss. Floating above this huge city, his line of sight swept slightly, and all the information about the entire Abyss main city and the large number of players who had already appeared in the city was in his hands. In the Abyss world, Sumu is a well-deserved god. All the changes in the whole world were hidden from his eyes. Controlling a mere city and controlling the information of millions of players is the easiest thing for him. Batches of players were sent over. When the figure just walked out of the realm teleportation array, every player received a prompt sound from the system. Whether to accept the Abyss. If they choose to accept it, the Abyss aura that is ubiquitous in the Abyss world will start to cleanse their bodies, transforming them from the Undead race or the Dark race to the Abyss race. If they choose to refuse, their bodies will be continuously weakened by the erosion of the Abyss, and eventually they will die, resurrected near the 4 resurrection stone tablets in the Abyss main city, and continue to repeat the above process. Of course, except for a few wonderful people, no one would choose to refuse the abyssization after entering the Abyss main city. Player. And there are so many players. Their abyssal transformation is naturally not the same as that of high-level undead such as Agnes. What they accept is only the most common abyssization. After the Abyss was completed, they were also the most common Abyss races and Abyss monsters. There is no strength bonus, no racial promotion, and no control over the Abyss world by Agnes and others. Wanna be a pit lord? Can. Raise your rank to the sanctuary level first. Not even a sanctuary, what qualifications do you have to become an Abyss lord in the Abyss world? Slowly. The number of players entering the Abyss main city is increasing. Slowly. The number of people who have completed abyssalization is also increasing. After completing the abyssization and officially becoming a member of the Abyss camp, most players began to explore the Abyss main city, explore the 6 surrounding satellite cities, and explore this huge and unknown world. Of course, the magic mountain that is as high as 10,000 meters is also within their scope of exploration. But, under the restriction of Sumu, even players who entered the legendary rank could only fly to the middle of the mountain at most, and could no longer take a step up 5.5 to reach the top of the magic mountain. Yes! Legendary bit. After a lapse of 7.5 years, and 2.5 years before the awakening of the gods, a player finally entered the legendary rank. And more than 1 consecutive days. When the more than 6 million undead faction players all entered the Abyss world and completed the abyssal transformation, Sumu also had a sufficient understanding of the faction under his command. More than 6 million players of the Abyss camp. Nearly 20 legendary ranks have appeared. These players who have stepped into the legendary rank are almost all players who have obtained great benefits from the main quests released by Sumu in the past and obtained the legendary professional template. Past life. The first player to enter the legendary rank was in the 8th year of the Second World, which was less than 2 years before the gods awakened. This life. Because of the existence of Sumu, because of the opening of the Undead camp, and because of the wars led by Sumu, as well as the many epic occupation templates and legendary occupation templates created by himself. This made the appearance of the first legendary rank player more than half a year earlier than in the previous life. More than 1. In terms of rank and level, the players of the Abyss camp under Sumu's command undoubtedly came to the forefront of the players in the other main material worlds in the entire game world. In the Abyss camp, the number of players who have entered the legendary rank alone is close to 20. The number of players who have entered the epic rank is even in the thousands. In other game worlds, even the strongest who gathered the resources of the entire game guild stayed at the upper or peak of the epic rank, and it was not a short time before breaking through the legendary rank. The time for them to break through the legend may be earlier, but it will never be much earlier, at most 1 or 2 months earlier than the previous life. The reason why this happens. There are 3 reasons. First, the appearance of Sumu made the players of the Abyss Camp transfer to the Monster Camp early. The strength of basic attributes, combined with the increase brought by the Skill Library and Equipment Library, makes the strength of players in the Abyss Camp significantly higher than the strength of players in other camps of the same level, making it easier for them to fight monsters and upgrade, and it is easier to obtain experience points. Second, the appearance of Sumu has made the players of the Abyss Camp experience large-scale wars again and gained a lot in these wars. And as Sumu entered the high-level world in advance, he was in contact with the Aboriginal people of a higher level in advance. Third, career templates. Sumu did not impose many restrictions on the career advancement of players from the Abyss Camp, original Undead Camp, as long as the career he transferred has a way forward, as long as the conditions stipulated by the rules of the game are met. Almost every players from the Abyss Camp can smoothly transfer to higher-level occupations. What about players from other factions? As mentioned above, even if they meet various conditions, they have to go through task 01 again and again, make corresponding contributions, and even have a certain degree of relationship with the Aborigines before they can get the next stage of career transfer. Information. After all, every high-level occupation is the most precious wealth of those high-level Aborigines, big forces, kingdoms, and empires, and it is impossible to impart it to players selflessly. This alone, even with the help of countless players, made the top players waste a lot of time. Sumu doesn't have this problem here. The entire camp is his, and all occupations are shaped and taught by him. He is not afraid that the players will become stronger and threaten him, so this kind of unrestricted professional advancement is the most important factor for the players of the Abyss Camp to surpass the players of other camps. Of course, with Sumu's achievement of the Abyss Demon, and with Agnes and others advancing to the Sanctuary and becoming the Abyss Lord who controls part of the power of the Abyss, Sumu can safely delegate part of his authority. Not only let them have the authority to teach skills, but also let them have the authority to use the power of the Abyss world to shape new Abyss occupations and teach new Abyss occupations. In this way, as time goes by, players from other camps will become more and more difficult to advance. As Sumu gradually becomes stronger, as the Abyss world continues to grow, as Agnes and others create more and more Abyss careers, their future career choices will also increase. Finally, when players from other camps are stuck in the hero rank and cannot advance, players from the Abyss camp can smoothly advance to epics, advanced legends, and may even find opportunities for advanced sanctuary. Become an Abyss Lord who controls a small Abyss world in the future. This prospect. If all this is known to the players, this possibility alone will make the Abyss camp unparalleled attractiveness to the players. Of course, this is all for later. Although, players in the Abyss camp advanced to legends more than half a year earlier than before, but they had little impact on the ending of the real world 2.5 years later. Even if they have advanced to the Sanctuary in the last 2.5 years, the power of a demigod is enough to crush countless sanctuaries, let alone a real god. If the destruction of the real world has changed after 2.5 years, this change is also brought by Sumu, the Abyss Demon God, not by the players of the Abyss camp. Only the achievement of Sumu, the God of the Abyss, can affect the ending of the real world 2.5 years later to a certain extent. Above the sky, Sumu was checking the information of these players without being aware of the players in the Abyss camp. The focus of his inspection was the less than 20 players who had entered the legendary rank. Abyss camp. As the ruler of the Abyss, the whole Abyss world is Sumu himself. When the players of the Abyss camp used the Abyss to purify themselves and completed the Abyss, their bodies and their souls were naturally marked with the mark of Sumu. Yes, Not just the body, but the soul. It was only after becoming the Abyss Demon God that Sumu discovered that his erosion, talent, and the erosive power of the Abyss world were enough to affect the player's soul. This kind of influence is not when the undead camp is activated, it is only the effect of changing the player's camp. Rather, really affects the player's soul in the real world. One of the most direct manifestations is that a player who has joined the Abyss camp, even in the real world, is proud of his identity as a member of the Abyss camp. He is loyal to the Abyss world and to the Abyss Master. Although the impact of this abyssization on players is not comparable to those of the high-level undead that Sumu personally enslaved and subdued, it is not far behind. The greatest benefit of this transformation is that every player who joins the Abyss camp will become more and more loyal to the Abyss world and the Abyss Master with the abyssization, as their strength and rank increase. Even if the game world and the real world are connected and the two worlds are united, this transformation will not stop. Because, at the same time as the strength and rank increase, the players of these Abyss camps and the Abyss world are more and more closely integrated. If a player successfully advanced to the Sanctuary and became an Abyss Lord, Sumu does not need to erode and enslave again. His loyalty to Sumu and the Abyss world will naturally reach that of Agnes and others. To that extent. Because the primary condition for becoming an Abyss Lord is the authority granted by Sumu, and it is the origin of the Abyss world that Sumu bestowed upon him and merged with his soul. Even he has become a part of the Abyss world, how can he betray the Abyss world? Regardless of player loyalty. Perhaps this is the biggest benefit that abyssalization brings to Sumu at present. This also makes that, even if more players join the Abyss camp, it will only bring benefits to Sumu, not harm him. In addition, when the mind merges with the Abyss world and looks at the player's soul in the form of the Abyss Demon God, the first time, Sumu breaks the limits of the game world, seeing the boundaries between the game world and the real world. This kind of boundary is not the boundary of physical space, but is similar to the boundary between two dimensions. Looking at the player's soul in the form of a demon, Sumu can clearly feel that a chain of laws protects the player's soul, and through the connection between the soul and the body. These chains of laws penetrate a certain boundary and link to another world. Every player who steps into the legendary rank is like an anchor, connecting the game world with the real world. The more players that step into the legendary tier, the more such anchor points. For the time being, the game world and the real world are still in a state of separation, and these points are just wrong. But when the number of players entering the legendary stage increases, the number of these spots will increase. The connection between the game world and the real world will be closer, and the barrier between the game world and the real world will become more fragile. Wait until the connection exceeds a certain minimum. With the power beyond the limit, the barrier between the game world and the real world can be torn apart, and the game world and the real world can be completely connected. This minimum is 1,000 legends, that is, 1,000 anchors. This power beyond limits. Perhaps it is the upper god, or it may be achieved by the joint efforts of several upper gods. At least, with Sumu's current power, it is difficult to shake the barrier between the game world and the real world, even if he appears in the form of an Abyss demon. Thus, the truth about the destruction of the real world in the previous life will be revealed. A sufficient number of players who have stepped into the legendary rank provides the gods with the wrong point of locating the real world, deepens the connection between the game world and the real world, and weakens the barrier between the game world and the real world. When they wake up from their slumber, they can tear open the barrier between the game world and the real world. Destroy the real world. As for the reason, still thinking about it? A group that can grow almost infinitely. Even if a huge part of the members of this group are limited to hero ranks, as long as 1/10,000th of them breaks through epic ranks, legendary ranks, sanctuaries, and even demigods, it is enough to have a devastating impact on the gods, the main material worlds, and the planes under the rule of the gods. A sanctuary. No gods will be in sight. 637, even if it is a 10 or 100 sanctuary, it will still not be in the eyes of the gods. But when these dozens and hundreds of sanctuaries come from a group and have a great influence on this group that can grow almost infinitely, they are not enough to threaten the gods themselves, but they're enough to affect the beliefs of the gods. Such a force is enough to easily destroy the main material worlds, even those high-level main material worlds. Affecting the belief in gods is shaking the foundation of gods. Again, what if these dozens or hundreds of sanctuaries became dozens or hundreds of demigods? Not to mention the belief in the gods, even the gods themselves felt a great threat. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a group? Unless it is like Sumu, the players of the Abyss camp are getting closer and closer to themselves in an abyssal way. The stronger the player's strength, the more loyal he is to himself. When the player grows into an Abyss Lord, he becomes a part of the Abyss world that is absolutely loyal to himself, making the Abyss world stronger. Otherwise, who dares to let such a group develop? Erosion, talent, unique. The dimensional world with the power of erosion as the source of the Abyss world is also unique. Those gods can't be like Sumu, in the process of subtly turning players into a force that is absolutely loyal to themselves. Naturally, they must destroy their foundations before the players rise. Leave only the part that you can control. Perhaps this is the truth that the gods of the previous life came and destroyed the real world. Thus, Sumu also felt more and more emotional. Taking the power of erosion as the source of the Abyss world is the most correct decision he made. Thus, he is also more certain that in the future, the countless players who join the Abyss camp will be one of the most important forces under his command. Perhaps, with the participation of countless players, his Abyss world can grow infinitely, and eventually grow into the ultimate form that devours countless planes and worlds, and has countless planes and worlds, the endless abyss. With the passage of time, the more than 6 million players of the original Undead camp have finally completed the abyssization and become players of the Abyss camp. As the functions of the main city of the Abyss become more and more perfect, the more than 6 million players of the Abyss camp have gradually become accustomed to regard the Abyss world and the Abyss main city as their base camp, and then travel between Anduin continent and Anduin through the boundary teleportation formations on the Abyss main city square. Between the continents of Riel, continue your own journey of fighting monsters and upgrading. At the same time, the undead on Anduin and Amriel, in addition to the City of Death and the City of Doom, which also serve as subbases, there are a large number of undead as functional NPCs. Other undead cities only retain the most basic undead to meet the needs of players. Anduin Continent and the Empire of the Undead, most of the undead were also moved into the Abyss world by Sumu. After completing the abyssization, they were stationed in the Abyss world. And Sumu, at this time, he is already thinking about advancing to the level of a demigod. It has been said before, the Dimension Demon God is a completely different path to becoming a god than the God of Faith. After becoming a Dimension Demon God, it does not affect him continuing to move in the direction of the God of Faith. At least, before reaching the level sufficient to confer a god, each achievement Dimension Demon God will continue to improve his realm to improve his basic strength. After all, in addition to the kinds of abilities brought by the dimensional world, the most powerful time for a dimensional demon god is when he is in his own dimensional world, and his strength will be greatly weakened when he leaves his own dimensional world. Of course, with the existence of the dimensional world, there is no need to worry about Sumu's survivability. But it is necessary to continue to improve his strength if he wants to intervene in the Battle of the Gods that will accompany the awakening of the gods after 2.5 years. Under the Sanctuary, whether it is a player, aborigines, or monsters, the most important thing they rely on to improve their strength and rank is the occupation template or attribute template. After stepping into the pinnacle of the legendary rank, the help of occupation templates and attribute templates for players, natives, and monsters will come to an end. Every player, aborigines, and monsters must find their own opportunities before they can advance to the Sanctuary. Sanctuary is a process of skill nativization. From the cognition of the Aborigines, it is to let the skills you have to break through the restrictions of the occupation template so that you can change the form of the skills at will and truly exert the power of the skills. From the player's cognition, stepping into the sanctuary means that the power they gain in the game world is completely integrated with the real world. Because of the existence of dimensional barriers between the game world and the real world, it is the pinnacle of stepping into the legendary rank, and a player is just an ordinary person in the real world. Only when the dimensional barrier disappears and the real world and the game world are connected, can the power they gain in the game world merge with the body in the real world. But if a player can step into the sanctuary, even if the dimensional barrier still exists, even if the game world and the real world have not yet been connected, they will still gain the power they have obtained in the game world in the real world. At best, the vitality and energy level of the real world are too low, so that their combat power is not as powerful as in the game world. Sanctuary is a hurdle. Demigods are another hurdle. To advance from the sanctuary to a demigod, not only need to completely nativize one's own skills, raise one's own level to the full level of level 90, but also need to obtain the most basic 1 point of divinity. Divinity is the foundation of demigods. If it is said that a true god can also transform divine power through the power of belief and continuously purify his divine body with his own divine power so as to condense and increase his divinity, a demigod who wants to gain divinity can only do so by killing and looting. Kill other demigods and gain divinity by devouring their bodies and souls, or kill gods and gain divinity by devouring their bodies and souls. Killing a true god with the strength of a demigod is more difficult than ascending to the sky. So, killing each other between demigods is the only way for a demigod to increase his divinity. The battle of the avenues is endless. If we assume the war between the gods comes from the struggle between believers and the power of faith, and also from the struggle between the clergy and theocracy, the war between the demigods will also add a plunder of the other's divinity, either a god or a demigod. As long as you embark on this road to becoming a god, you will embark on a never-ending road of fighting. The battle of the avenues is endless. It is absolutely not Lingyun. Before a god has truly stepped into the highest realm and is far above other gods, it is the most powerful god, so beware of this kind of battle. Demigods are like that. So is Sumu. Because after stepping into the peak sanctuary, he, who has no future ahead, must obtain the most basic 1 point of divinity from the demigods and even the true gods in order to continue to grow and advance. Obtaining this most basic 1 point of divinity is 1,000 times more difficult than the opportunity for a peak legend to find himself and enter the sanctuary realm. Because this means that he wants the sanctuary to intervene in the war at the demigod level with its peak strength. To fight a demigod directly, even with Sumu's strength, he can't guarantee that he will win, for other peak sanctuaries who have entered this level and want to go further. Perhaps their only chance was to take advantage of the two demigods fighting. But the war between the two demigods, even if it is just the aftermath of the battle, may lead to the fall of a peak sanctuary. It is conceivable that in this case, the tiger's mouth will be eaten and a part of the demigods will be snatched from it. Body, how hard it is. The original demigods, where their divinity came from, Sumu does not know. He only knows. When he decided to climb towards the demigod realm, he was about to face a danger that was 100 times more difficult and dangerous than before. Fortunately, he is a dimension demon, an abyss demon. With his own dimensional world, even in the most dangerous situation, he can escape at any time and return to his own dimensional world. If you are lucky enough, you can drag a demigod into your own dimensional world. It is even more able to mobilize the power of the Abyss world with the personality and identity of the Abyss demon god, and kill him directly. Have to say, first achieve the Dimension demon god, and then consider promoting the demigod. This promotion path, which is diametrically opposed to other demigods, makes Sumu's danger and difficulty reduce countless times when he completes the leap from the peak sanctuary to the demigod. Of course, that doesn't mean Sumu can sit back and relax. Because no one knows how long a demigod with an infinite lifespan has existed and what cards he has. Even today's Sumu, if you want to deal with a demigod, you need to be careful. The most important is, he must first know where a demigod is. Demigod. Abyss World. 10,000 feet of Magic Mountain. Abyss Hall. Sitting on his own throne, Sumu thought silently. Actually, there is another way to the source of divinity, and that is the artifact. But the artifact referred to here is not an artifact like the Holy Light 3 artifacts of the Holy Light Empire. In terms of quality, the Holy Light 3 divine artifacts may have really reached the quality of divine artifacts. But in terms of power, the Holy Light 3 artifacts are at most the most powerful semi-artifact. Artifacts are called artifacts, not only because of their highest quality, but also because of their godlike terrifying power. Only the artifacts that were forged by the gods and integrated into the divine power and might of the gods can be called real artifacts. This kind of artifact incorporates the divine power and power of the gods, and it is also very likely to contain divinity. Devouring such an artifact to obtain its divinity has the same effect as devouring a demigod, the body and soul of a true god to obtain its divinity. Pity. A demigod, Sumu can still force the ship to win. At least he knows that there must be a demigod-level existence hidden in the plane of death, a real artifact. And it is a real artifact that is not mastered by the gods, the number of which is probably more than that of the gods. The number is even less. After careful consideration, there is no clue. Sumu gradually fell into silence. But a few days later, the dark priest still in the city of the dead in the world of Anriel sent a message to Sumu with the connection between the souls. The content of this message is, First Archon wants to meet Sumu. The first consul, a dimensional demon god who is very likely to develop his dimensional plane to a large plane level. If it was before, he was still afraid of the first consul. After he became an abyss demon, the once mysterious and unpredictable first consul was finally overtaken by him. Received the invitation of the first consul to meet, but Sumu did not refuse. The first consul was undoubtedly from the plane of death. The divinity required by Sumu's advanced demigods is likely to come from the plane of death. This meeting, Wang Haozhao, is precisely an opportunity. An opportunity to learn more about the plane of death, the Dark Council, and even the news of the demigods in the Dark Council from the mouth of the first consul. Subsequently, after sending a message to the Dark Priest, Sumu's will descended upon his own plane projection in the city of the dead. Next moment. Endless power installation. A vague shadow came out of the Dark Priest's body, and it became clearer and clearer, gradually becoming the image of Sumu's black helmet and black armor. In the form of energy incarnation, Sumu descended into the city of the dead. Then, under the guidance of the dark sacrifice, we walked towards the Imperial Hall in the center of the city of death. Inside the Imperial Palace, the first consul was already waiting. As before, the human figure outlined by the finely broken blue soul fire is clearly visible to the naked eye, but it is difficult to detect its trace with perception. Even the space around it is layered on top of one another, making it indistinct. The first consul. It is clearly similar to Sumu, coming in the form of plane projection. Just below. It is also an energy incarnation transformed from plane projection, and it is also only a small part of the body's power. At this time, the aura emanating from Sumu's energy incarnation has far exceeded that of the first consul. It has really surpassed the first consul, if we assume. Seeing the first consul again, Sumu is indifferent and calm, without a trace of turbulent words. Seeing Sumu's first consul again is shocked and unbelievable. The same as the Dimension Demon. Even if the first consul hadn't reached the height of Sumu, he could clearly tell that this man met him 2 or 3 years ago as a newcomer to the sanctuary, and was entrusted by him to be the second ruler of the Undead Empire. Guan, like him, appeared in the form of an incarnation of energy. The appearance of energy incarnation alone means that in such a short period of time, the second Archon has developed his dimension plane to the level of a large plane. This speed. Simply appalling. To know. Backed by the plane of death, backed by a powerful existence, the first console has a deeper understanding of the entire game world than some demigods that have existed for tens of thousands of years. It is in his perception. The powerful demigods who embarked on the road of dimensional demons developed their own dimensional planes from half planes to large planes, and the fastest one took nearly 10,000 years. 2 or 3 years. Is it enough for one undead to complete a trial? Is it enough for a sanctuary to retreat once? Enough for a demigod to take a nap? It was in the past 2 or 3 years that the second consul, who he personally appointed, developed his own dimension plane to the level of a large plane. This speed. How could he not be horrified? There are secrets on Sumu's body. And must be the secret that the gods are crazy about. But the first consul did not dare to be greedy. Because, while realizing that Sumu, the second consul, appeared in the form of an energy incarnation, he also felt the power of Su 637 Mu, this energy incarnation, far more powerful than himself. Even, he can also feel a terrifying aura that overrides himself, makes him instinctually fear, and even surrenders from Sumu's energy incarnation. This kind of breath, even in his strong backer, he has never felt it. This is Abyss? Unable to help, the first consul's heart trembled. A few months ago, a powerful being who embarked on the road of a dimensional demon became a demon. When its true name was born from the source of law, a vision descended from the sky, shaking the world. In view of the particularity of the Dimension Demon God, in addition to knowing that the newly promoted Dimension Demon God is named Abyss, it is those powerful beings who are only one step away from the conferred God. Where is the Dimension Demon God named Abyss? Until now. Only then did the first consul know that the powerful existence of the demon god who made it was actually in the Undead Empire. It turned out to be the second consul of the Undead Empire that he personally appointed. If we assume, in just 2 or 3 years, the development of one's own dimension plane from a half plane to a large plane is appalling. In just 2 or 3 years, developing one's own dimension plane from a half plane to the world level and becoming a dimension demon god is unprecedented and no one can accept it. In just 2 or 3 years, he has completed the road that other dimension demon gods need tens of thousands or even tens of thousands of years to complete. If it takes another 2 or 3 years, how far can he grow? No one knows. No one dared to imagine. Thus, the first consul is even more certain that Sumu hides a big secret that even the gods are crazy. This secret may be the key to Sumu reaching such a high level in such a short period of time. Only, he has become a dimension demon. The time to discover the secret, to seize the secret, is long gone. In the face of a real dimensional demon god, let alone him, even the great existence behind him, even the real god, is difficult to threaten him. Unless, find the dimension world of this dimension demon, destroy its dimension world with power far beyond its world level, and then seize the body of the dimension demon. Only, can anyone do this in a time when the gods were sleeping? No. When the gods wake up from their slumber, who knows how powerful this dimension demon has become? No conflict. Only draw. Thinking of this, the dark blue human figure who was still sitting in the position of the first consul hurriedly got up, bowed to Sumu, and respectfully said, "The flame of darkness pays tribute to the abyss." Raised eyebrows. Sumu was not surprised when the first consul recognized his identity. Demons are also a type of gods. Even if he returns to the abyss world and becomes one with the abyss world, he is a complete abyss demon god. But since he has become a demon god, his body and his incarnation naturally have the aura of a demon god. Unless he deliberately hides, With the strength of the first consul, it is not difficult to feel the devilish aura on him. In addition, for a long time, Sumu is the only one who has achieved the existence of a dimension demon, and it is only natural that a first consul with a mysterious origin can guess his identity. Exemption. With a chuckle, and sitting in the second consul's seat, Sumu asked, "I don't know why the first consul invited this king to come here." There is no need for Sumu to pose as a demon in front of the first consul. The first consul was also delighted. Still maintaining his respect for a demon god, the first consul took out a black card with a dark gold pattern on the edge, placed it in front of Sumu, and said respectfully, "Your Majesty the Abyss," the third one. Months later, the Dark Council convened. All members of the Dark Council are eligible to participate in this Dark Council. However, the current status of the Abyss should be to participate in this meeting as the Speaker of the Dark Council rather than an ordinary member. "My Lord, Your Majesty the Fire of Wisdom, I look forward to your coming, Your Majesty the Abyss." Card. It's an invitation. Just like the death certificate that Sumu obtained at the beginning, which was the black token, the invitation letter in front of him was condensed from the purest power of death. According to the information revealed by the first consul last time, the Dark Council has 13 speakers. Now the first consul famously said that Sumu at this time should participate in this Dark Council meeting as the 14th speaker, that is to say, the other 13 speakers are at least demigods. Otherwise, it is not eligible to be tied with Sumu. In addition, the first consul also pointed out his backer, the Fire of Wisdom. In accordance with His Majesty, the Fire of Wisdom is at least a demigod. Because only demigods and true gods are qualified to be crowned by beings in the demigod realm in order to express their respect for these powerhouses. The Fire of Wisdom is at least a demigod and most likely one of the 13 speakers of the Dark Council. The countless intelligent creatures in the captivity of the Undead Empire believe in the demigod Dark Titan. Wisdom Fire. Dark Titan. What is the relationship between these two demigods who are connected to the first Archon? Sumu is contemplating. However, the first consul mistakenly thought that the newly promoted demon god His Majesty was thinking about whether to go to the meeting held by the Dark Council. Think about it. The first consul continued, "With the protection of my lord, Fire of Wisdom, there has been no battle between demigods on the plane of death for tens of thousands of years. If the Abyss has time, you might as well come to the darkness. Parliament, take a look. My Lord's Flame of Wisdom is recognized as the most wise existence by all the speakers and members of the Dark Council. Even under some powerful demigods, they will go to the plane of death from time to time to ask, 'Your Majesty, the Flame of Wisdom. This meeting, I want to come to the Abyss, Your Majesty. You will not be disappointed.' Wisdom Fire. Dare to use the name of wisdom and is recognized as the most wise existence by the demigod-level speakers. The Fire of Wisdom will not pretend to be a false name. First, Sumu originally entered the plane of death, seeking the opportunity to step into the demigod realm. Second, after achieving the Abyss Demon and having enough protection for his own safety, Sumu himself also wanted to enter the plane of death, to see the truth of the plane of death, and to see how vast the game world is. After all, among the planes and worlds known to Sumu, the plane of death is the only higher plane that is connected to many, or even all, of the material worlds. Originally, he had this plan. The appearance of this invitation letter gave Sumu a chance. An upright witness to the plane of death and the opportunity to witness to what extent the dark camp in the entire game world has developed. A little meal. Sumu put away the invitation letter transformed into the power of death and said softly, "After 3 months, this king will definitely go to the plane of death. Boit. The fire of darkness is with my lord, waiting for the arrival of the Abyss crown." Purpose achieved. I also saw the true face of the new demon god Abyss. After bowing and bowing, the fine blue flame that constituted the first consul was quietly extinguished, and the energy incarnation from the plane of death also disappeared without a trace. 3 months. The Imperial Hall became quiet again. Sitting in the second consul's seat, Sumu quietly recalled the information he had received. 13 speakers. At least 13 beings who have entered the demigod realm. If you add the unknown number of ordinary members, the power of the Dark Council is far beyond Sumu's imagination. After all, back then, when he advanced into the sanctuary and even embarked on the path of the dimensional demon god, when his combat power had surpassed that of Rhoda Monroe, he received the death certificate presented by the first consul as a proof of joining the Dark Council. The Empire of the Undead, even Rhoda Monroe, who had already entered the Median Sanctuary, was not eligible to obtain a death certificate and become a member of the Dark Council. So, the bottom line of becoming a member of the Dark Council is to possess the strength of a higher sanctuary or even a peak sanctuary. As such, at least 13 demigods, the number of which may reach dozens or even hundreds of high-ranking sanctuaries, or the strength of the Dark Council of peak sanctuary is really terrible. 3 months is a short time, especially for an existence that has become a demon god. But that doesn't mean that Sumu can't do anything in those 3 months. At least, before entering the plane of death, before he truly sees the vastness of the game world, he still has time to further improve his strength. Plane erosion. His target has already been chosen. It is impossible to improve the strength of one's own body and let oneself step from the peak sanctuary to the demigod level in just 3 months. Don't say that he doesn't have the information of the demigods in his hands for the time being. Even if there is, to find a demigod and kill another demigod, it is not something that can be done in just 3 months. The place where the demigods hide may be even more secret than Sumu. It is also more difficult to improve the strength of one's subordinates. Agnes and others all use the advanced sanctuary, and the next time is to continuously harvest the experience points from the players and improve their level. By the way, in this process, they will complete the originalization of their skills. In addition to the gluttonous insect king and the glorious scarab beetle, it is expected to advance to the sanctuary in a short time, and other legendary undead have no hope of advancing to the sanctuary in a short time. Finally, the way he improves his strength also falls on his own dimension world. As a small world, that is, a low-level world, it is upgraded with free points, and each level up requires a full 1 million free points. The Unreal continent has almost been harvested by Sumu. Even if it is harvested again, it will be difficult to collect the free points required for the Abyss world to upgrade to 1 level. It's the Empire of the Undead. With countless intelligent creatures raised in captivity in the Unreal continent, the power of belief generated by the Undead Empire is probably second only to the Holy Light Empire. Only, on the one hand, the Dark Titan will harvest the power of faith from the Undead Empire once a month, and the statues of the evil gods located in the Undead Empire contain extremely limited power of faith. On the other hand, the Dark Titan is most likely one of the 13 speakers of the Dark Council. At this time when the Dark Council is about to be held, Mu does not want to conflict with a powerful evil god because of this power of faith. So, relying on free points to improve the level of the Abyss world is not feasible for the time being. If you want to improve your strength again in these short 3 months, you can only rely on the ability that comes with the Abyss world, plane erosion. Under normal circumstances, it takes at least years to erode a plane or world and devour a plane or world. But, in the hands of Sumu, there is precisely a world that can be eroded and swallowed up in a short period of time. Anjuan continent. Originally, the Anjuan continent lost all high-ranking professionals because of Sumu's rampage. In the past 2 or 3 years, the constant hunting of the undead camp players has made this main material world. Even the living heroes of the hero rank are pitiful. Don't say it's Sumu. He casually dispatches a high-level undead, enough to crush the entire Anjuan continent. In addition, during the first battle of the City of Salvation, the blessing of the power of the world made Augustine forcibly break through the upper limit of the world and enter the sanctuary. While allowing Sumu to gain a sanctuary subordinate, it also led to a large-scale loosening of the laws and regulations of the Anjuan continent. The loosening of these laws and rules is manifested in the appearance of loopholes in the crystal wall of the world, which is more likely to cause the invasion of demigods and evil gods, and is more likely to be eroded by the abyss world. The whole game world. I am afraid there is no other world or plane that is more suitable for the first plane erosion than Anduin continent. 3 months is a short time. But it is enough for the abyss world to erode the Anduin continent, devour the Anduin continent, and integrate this low-level main material world into the abyss world. Abyss Hall. On the throne. When the will returned to the body, Sumu opened his own attribute panel. As early as when the abyss world took shape and he became a demon god, he already knew how to carry out plane erosion and how to make the abyss world devour other planes and worlds. The key is the abyss and the abyss magic. When the abyss world is docked with the main material world, when the abyss aura and abyss magic energy formed by the erosive power of the abyss world gradually infect a complete main material world. At this level of the world, Sumu can initiate the abyss world's devouring of a primary material world. This process. For the time being, it is not possible to let Sumu lead by himself. But now that the abyss world has been born and the ability of plane erosion has also been formed, it means that the rules of the game world have also been changed accordingly, allowing this kind of behavior to appear. Before driving the abyss world to devour a world, Sumu has only 2 things to do. 1. Suppress and obliterate the powerhouses in this main material world, so that the creatures in this main material world are powerless to resist the next abyss invasion. 2. Diffusion of the abyss aura, eroding the main material world and polluting the main material world with the aura and demonic energy from the abyss world. When this erosion and contamination is more than half, Sumu can initiate the world's devour of the world. This is the rule. Also the rule. It is an evolutionary method that has never appeared before, but has been recognized by the rules and regulations of the game world after the birth of the abyss world. Invasion, repression, pollution, diffusion, erosion, devour. This is the whole process of the abyss world swallowing a main material world. Looking at his property panel and simulating the whole process in his mind, Sumu began to edit the information on the task release system and then released it. Soon, when Sumu edited the information about this plane erosion and sent it out, all players in the Abyss camp received a system prompt. Humph. The world main quest is released. Task name, Plane Invasion. Mission description, the growth of the Abyss world needs to devour other worlds. As the master of the Abyss world, Sumu is eyeing the Anduin continent where he was born. As a member of the Abyss camp, you have the responsibility to help your master spread the Abyss. The glory of the Anduin continent into the Abyss world. Mission goal, enter the Anduin continent, build the gate of the Abyss in the Anduin continent, and let the breath from the Abyss pollute the Anduin continent. Quest rewards. 1. Including but not limited to holy artifact, legendary equipment, props, job templates, attribute points, and experience points. 2. The right to build and rule a city in the Abyss world. Main mission. Every player who joins the Abyss camp is familiar with it. Because the entire Undead camp has risen along with the main quests again and again, and eventually grew into the current Abyss camp. The opener of the Undead camp, Sumu, the former Undead master, has gradually grown into the master of the Abyss world, the Abyss demon god, along with the main quests again and again. In this main quest, their goal is no longer a certain faction, but a whole world. Anduin continent. Not only the main material world where Sumu was born, but also the main material world where more than 6 million players from the Abyss camp were born. Start a plane war. Helping the Abyss to dominate the erosion and devour the world they are most familiar with is a rather wonderful journey for all players. But no one refuses. Not only because of the huge benefits that this main quest might bring, but also because in their understanding of the word abyss in the real world, it's not just about eroding the world, swallowing the world. 0. Ask for flowers. Will the worlds be incorporated into the abyss, and will it eventually become an endless abyss that includes countless worlds? The emergence of this world-class main quest. It means that the development of the abyss world has finally begun to go on the right track. It also means the roles they play will no longer be players of the monster camp, but the abyss demons who invade other worlds, erode other worlds, and devour other worlds. The transformation of this identity from player to monster to the ultimate villain who destroys the world. How to say? One word. Stimulate. The main quest has been released. The next thing is simple. Of the more than 6 million players of the Abyss Camp, except for a few who have their own plans, or who are carrying out a certain mission and have not joined them, most of the other players from the Abyss Camp flooded into the Anjuan continent at this moment. Subsequently, according to the blueprint given by Sumu in the mission information, the Abyss summoning circles were built, and the gates of the Abyss were also built in this main material world that had long lost its resistance. Subsequently, the aura of the Abyss and the demonic aura of the Abyss poured out from the Abyss world and began to permeate the Anjuan continent. Pollute the world. Also erode the world. Pity. There are no normal players on the Anjuan continent. Otherwise, when Sumu opened the plane erosion and let the abyssal players invade this world, those players in the living camp should be able to receive the opposite main quest. Against the invasion of the abyss world. Such a main quest, at least a mythical main quest, right? Do not. Not absolutely. There is still a player from the living camp on Anjuan continent. When Sumu released the main quest of the plane invasion, when the more than 6 million players from the Abyss camp poured into the Anjuan continent, when the Abyss summoning circles and the Abyss gates were built in this world, when the endless Abyss and the Abyss are pouring out, polluting and eroding this world. North of the continent. Frozen land. In the temple inherited by the barbarians, 2 figures, one big and one small, are standing opposite each other. The big figure is Mr. The small figure is a player. After a few years, after applying to Sumu and stationing in the Anjuan continent for a long time, Mist never left this heritage temple. In the past few years, he has put all of his experience on cultivating his inheritors. To this end, he missed the war between Sumu and the Holy Light Empire, missed the achievement of the demon god by his master, and even missed the transformation and canonization of his subordinates after the master was conferred a god. To this day, Mist is still at the pinnacle of the legendary rank. At the same time, he is also the only high-level undead under Sumu who still retains a pure undead identity and has never been transformed into an abyss species. Now, his heir was finally promoted to legend. His long-standing obsession has finally been completed, and the opportunity for the advanced sanctuary has finally been realized. Only, seems a little late. The plane invaded, and the abyss came. The world he once lived in will be swallowed up and merged into the abyss world. The barbarians he has been guarding will also be abyssized and become one of the abyss species. Undead is irreversible. Undead are invincible. This was his advice to the barbarians when the King of Bones rose, and it was also a way to protect the barbarians. Only, after, no more barbarians. Barbarian. It is destined to become an abyss species. Like many other living creatures in this world. He can't change this, and he won't change it. Having cultivated his own successor, and relying on his relationship with the Lord to shelter the barbarians for so long, Mist's mission has been completed. Next, he wants to return to the Anreal continent, enter the Abyss world after entering the Advanced Sanctuary, accept the baptism of the Abyss breath, the Abyss magic energy, and even the origin of the world, and become the Abyss Lord. Barbarian. It's up to them. Mr. is gone. After completing his obsession, he left the Inheritance Temple and left this world. He was left with only one word of advice. Get into the abyss as much as possible. Once, it was because of the advice of Mist, the barbarian ancestor, that when the other living races suffered heavy losses, the barbarians could survive the attack of the undead natural disaster. Now, too, If the barbarians can accept his advice, try their best to accept the abyss, and transform into the abyss as a whole, they can still survive and live better. Only, by that time, they will no longer be barbarians. Mr. is gone. There is only one figure left in this heritage temple. 640. A player. Heartless fish. That's right. The barbarian who was chosen by Mist as his inheritor is this barbarian player with the talent of divine power, and is currently the only player in the living camp on the Anjuan continent. At first, it was the heartless fish who sold the news of the existence of the Temple of Inheritance and Mist to the Players Guild. This led to Sumu coming to the door, enslaving Mist, and obtaining the follow-up of the skull note from his hands. Now, the player who once betrayed the ancestors of the barbarians not only became the inheritor of Mist, but also became the only player who entered the legendary ranks with the help of Mist's power and became the reserve patriarch of the barbarians. Have to say, it's amazing. Perhaps, if the fish with no heart didn't sell the news of the Inheritance Temple and Mist, even if Sumu can grow to the height of the Dimension Demon, it will never be so fast. The existence of one player cannot interfere with the tasks of the more than 6 million players of the Abyss Camp. The existence of a barbarian could not interfere with the general trend of Sumu's devouring the Anjuan continent. With the passage of time, more and more Abyss summoning circles have been established by players on Anjuan continent, and more Abyss gates have appeared on Anjuan continent. The endless Abyss aura gushed out from the Abyss world and began to spread in this world. Looking out of the world. The process of the Abyss world eroding Anjuan continent is like Sumu eroding the statues, turning the power of erosion into shadows and covering the space within the statues. Pieces of shadows emerged on the world crystal wall and spread quickly. These shadows are the eroded and spread parts of Anjuan continent. When the area where the shadows spreads occupies more than half of the world's wall, Sumu can control the Abyss world to tear apart the world crystal wall of the main material world and devour the main material world. Slowly, there are more and more Abyss summoning circles. Slowly, there are more and more gates to the Abyss. When nearly 2 months have passed and the eroded and polluted part of the Anjuan continent's world crystal wall has reached 2/3, the final moment will come. Anjuan continent. When the system prompt for the completion of the mission sounded, the actions of the players stopped. They stood in place and couldn't help looking up into the sky. Planar erosion. Devour the world. Every player who participates in this mission knows that their ultimate purpose of this mission is to assist the Abyss world to devour the Anjuan continent. But no one can imagine how the Abyss world will devour the Anjuan continent. And now, the time has come to witness this for yourself. From the moment the task is completed, time elapses minute by minute. Every player who is still on the Anjuan continent opened their eyes wide, waiting for that moment to come. Then, a roar suddenly sounded from between heaven and earth. Under the gaze of countless players, a terrifying figure that seemed to be 10,000 feet tall appeared above the sky. Black helmet, black armor, black dagger. This figure is clearly their master, the figure of the Abyss demon god Sumu. However, this figure is so high that it completely covers the entire sky, appearing in the form of a demon. The figure was cut out. A terrifying sword light that seemed to tear the entire world apart suddenly appeared and slashed into the sky. Jiangshi, countless huge cracks appeared in the sky. This feeling is amazing. It was as if Sumu, who appeared in the form of a demon, was separated from the players in the world by a layer of glass. Cut out. Glass shattered. The countless huge cracks also directly communicate the space inside the world and the space outside the world. Of course, this is just what players see. At this time, Sumu had indeed merged with the Abyss world, appeared in the form of a demon, and ripped apart the world crystal wall of Anjuan continent. It has been said before. The distance between worlds is not a simple physical distance. They can be said to be extremely far apart, or they can be said to be separated by a piece of paper. When the aura of the abyss and the demonic aura of the abyss pollutes this world, and when the world crystal wall is occupied by shadows, the abyss world and Anduin continent are indeed only separated by a layer of world crystal wall. So, with a full blow, after tearing open the world crystal wall of Anduin continent, what lies outside the world crystal wall of this main material world is not the endless void surging with torrents of energy, but the abyss world. Ripping apart the world crystal wall is just the first step. When there is no world crystal wall as a barrier between the two worlds, more and more intense abyss auras frantically poured out of the abyss world and poured into the Anduin continent. And Sumu, appearing in the form of a demon god, he directly tore apart the crystal wall of the world and stepped into the Anduin continent. Take time. The laws and rules of Anduin continent are rioting. Gale, rainstorm, lightning, frost, cold snap. Almost all the forces of nature that can be imagined appear at this moment, madly sweeping towards Sumu, who has stepped into this world. It seems to be killing him here. Only, the laws and rules of the Anduin continent have been loosened, and after the crystal wall of the world is torn apart, the laws and rules of this main material world have been weakened to the limit. The instinctive counterattacks of these worlds may easily wipe out a sanctuary, or even a demigod, but they are far from enough to threaten an abyss demon god who descends in the form of a demon. Entering this world is only the first step. And it's not a necessary step to devour the world. When entering the Anduin continent in the form of the abyss demon, staring at the attacks that appeared from the instinctive counterattacks of countless worlds, Sumu quickly spread the power of space from the abyss world. Appearing in the form of a peak sanctuary, the power of space that Sumu spreads instantly can cover a distance of dozens of kilometers at most. But after appearing in the form of an abyss devil, the power of space that he spreads instantly can cover a distance of tens or millions of miles. The power of space, one release and one retraction. Immediately. In the places covered by the power of space, the mountains, rivers, forests, grasslands, and the villages, towns, and cities that originally existed all disappeared. Appeared directly in the corresponding place in the abyss world. In situ. There is only a sinkhole of unknown depth left. Entering the eroded world in the form of a demon is not a necessary step for the abyss world to devour other worlds. The reason why Sumu wants to do this is to put all the creatures of this world into the abyss world before the abyss world completely devours the world and arrange them in advance. Pick. These creatures were left on purpose by him. When these creatures have completed the abyssal transformation and become an abyss species, Sumu can completely build his own belief system based on these creatures and provide himself with the power of belief. Just like what the Undead Empire has been doing. When enough intelligent creatures are transformed into abyss species, and when their own belief system is established, even if they don't go out to plunder the animal husbandry, they will continue to gain the power of belief. In the worst case, when the gods wake up, the battle of gods starts, and when he is not an opponent at all, there are enough believers and sources of faith power, Sumu can also grow up slowly. In this way, these intelligent creatures who have long been subdued and lost their resistance to Sumu are naturally a precious resource that Sumu cannot miss. A plain fold. That is, an area of hundreds of thousands or even millions of square kilometers is covered. One space storage. Countless creatures and intelligent creatures have been collected into the abyss world and placed in relatively safe places. Coming to this place in the form of an abyss demon and facing the countless crazy attacks, Sumu shot again and again, scraping the entire Anduin continent away hundreds of meters thick. Of course, all creatures living on it are not immune to 5.5. The more than 6 million players from the Abyss camp are naturally among them. All were transferred to the Abyss world. Finally, after a full day, the entire Anduin continent was raided. By this time, the continent of Anduin is actually doomsday. In the sky, space cracks that are tens of thousands of kilometers long lie in the sky, pouring a steady stream of abyss into this world. Above the earth, The cold and dead rock formations occupy the entire field of vision, and there is no trace of vitality and life. Coupled with the wild winds, torrential rain, thunder, lightning, volcanoes, and tsunamis, this is the real end of the world. Of course, compared with the next development, the so-called end of the world is just a piece of cake. But what? Sumu's purpose has been achieved. Next, the Abyss World's devouring of the Anduin continent is left to the rules of the game to run automatically, no need for him to continue to intervene. Mind a move. The figure of the demon god with a height of 10,000 feet returned to the Abyss World, lost Sumu's restraint, and the Abyss World's devouring of this world officially began. The true end of Anduin continent. It's finally here. Wow! Boom! Various sounds that shook the world resounded throughout the space. When the Abyss World's devouring of the Anduin continent really began, the sky began to shatter, and the pieces of broken glass-like world crystal walls slowly merged into the Abyss World. The earth began to shake, and endless magma erupted, turning the world into a lava world. The devouring of the world by the world is most fundamentally the devouring of the origin of the world, the laws and rules within the world, and finally the devouring of the material world. When this engulfment began, the world origin of Anduin continent was rapidly decreasing, and the world origin of the Abyss World was rapidly increasing. Subsequently, the laws and rules of the world gradually disappear. The space within the world is shrinking, the continent is shrinking, the energy level is decreasing, and it is gradually degenerating from a main material world to the direction of the plane and the half-plane. Because Anduin continent no longer has much resistance, this process of devouring will not last long, but it will not end in just 1 or 2 days. Wait until swallowing is complete. In the entire game world, there will no longer be a main material world called Anduin continent. Everything in this main material world will be extracted, swallowed, and digested by the Abyss World in the way of returning to the origin of the world, and finally a world will be used as nutrients to promote the growth of the Abyss World. At this time, Sumu has returned to the Abyss World. Sitting on his own throne, he no longer appears in the form of an Abyss demon, but Sumu's mind is still integrated with the entire Abyss World, monitoring the entire Abyss World. The Abyss World's devouring of the Anduin continent has been ignored by him. Anduin 01 continent is disappearing. The Abyss World is expanding. The energy level is rising. As long as you wait with peace of mind, this process will naturally end. But he can't ignore the countless creatures who have been transformed into the form of demon gods and transferred to the Abyss World with the instinctive counterattack of countless worlds. The native species of the Abyss World, because it was born naturally in this world, are not afraid of the erosion of the Abyss and Abyss demonic energy. Bathing in the Abyss aura and Abyss demonic energy for a long time can instead promote their growth, just like the death aura to the undead. The high-level undead was transformed by Sumu himself and broke into the origin of the Abyss World, and the identity changed from pure undead to Abyss Lord, and Sumu did not need to worry. That is, the more than 6 million players of the Abyss Camp are protected by the rules of the game world. Unless the players do not want to join the Abyss Camp but appear in the Abyss World, there will be no danger. As long as they want to join the Abyss Camp, they will definitely be 100% successful in the Abyss. Only those many creatures. If you leave it alone, let these intelligent creatures be transformed into the Abyss and transform into the Abyss species by themselves by the Abyss breath and the Abyss demonic energy, I am afraid that most of them will be lost. Even those middle and low-level undead, in the process of abyssification, there are many undeads who can't bear the transformation of Abyss, and their bodies are dead and souls are destroyed, leaving only a pile of powder. The erosion of Abyss aura and Abyss demonic energy has always been violent. The transformation of the Abyss is also full of danger. If Sumu didn't take control himself, this kind of abyssal transformation alone would be enough to cause most of the creatures he transferred to be lost in the abyssization process. Of course, Having reached the heroic rank and the existence above the heroic rank, they already have the strength to resist the erosion of the abyss aura and the abyss demonic energy for a short time, completing the process little by little. For this kind of existence, there is basically no danger in abyssalization. The mind is in harmony with the world. Sumu's thoughts moved, and the entire abyss world, the status quo of the countless beings who were transferred by him, also appeared in his mind. Appearing in this form similar to the heavenly Tao of the abyss world, Sumu is equivalent to connecting his brain to a supercomputer, and no amount of information can be easily processed. Mind a move. In the countless corners of the abyss world, the species, races, towns, and cities were immediately isolated by the laws and rules that Sumu mobilized this world. Within this area, the concentration of abyss aura and abyss demonic energy was reduced to almost zero. Of course, only for living beings. Outside these isolation areas, those trees, those grasslands, and those vines are also under the erosion of abyss breath and abyss exhaust gas. Compared with living creatures, the adaptability of these plants is obviously much stronger. The breath of the abyss merged, and the green trees began to change. These trees, or the leaves withered, the branches twisted, the roots activated, and became like ghost forests in the erosion of the abyss breath, or the leaves turned from green to pitch black. Relying on absorbing and transforming the energy in the abyss breath survive. Those grasslands, in the process of gradually becoming polluted and degenerated, began to give birth to a young collective consciousness with a large grassland as the center. The pieces of grass that mutated, the blades of grass gradually became sharper, and the roots gradually became more developed, also became the minions and weapons of this collective consciousness at this moment. Those vines, the thorns of the roots, in the process of being polluted and degraded, evolved into a black python-like existence, able to freely prey on animals as nutrients for their own growth and advancement. These normal plants, which originally only depended on absorbing water and nutrients and receiving sunlight, were able to grow continuously. After becoming abyss, they became magical plants that could survive by absorbing the energy of the abyss and could also prey and grow on their own. From producer to predator. This is the fundamental transformation of the magical plants in the abyss world. Plants are like that. Not to mention animals. In the process of being eroded by the aura of the abyss and the demonic aura of the abyss, animals that cannot bear it will die immediately. Flesh rots, bones rot, and become nutrients for other beings. If they can withstand the erosion of abyss aura and abyss demonic energy and successfully complete the abyssal transformation, they will not only change their shape, but also increase their aggression and attack power by leaps and bounds. Plants, animals, as well as the monsters and beasts that originally lived in the wild, these are all ignored by Sumu. The huge number makes that even if most of them fall in the process of abyssalization, the number of the remaining parts is sufficient. Coupled with the various magical plants and abyss species that were originally born in the abyss world. Enough to dress up this new world with vitality and splendor. Race. After witnessing the transformation of those plants and animals and obtaining enough information from the abyssal process, Sumu began to control the abyss and the abyss to invade into the isolated areas. Little by little, increase the concentration of abyss aura and abyss magic energy in these areas. Just like boiling a frog in warm water, this little way of increasing the concentration of abyss aura and abyss demonic energy gave these intelligent creatures more time to adapt to abyss aura and abyss demonic energy. Of course, even under Sumu's active control, there will still be many intelligent creatures perishing under the erosion of abyss aura and abyss demonic energy. For example, the holy light profession, such as the heart to the light, is difficult to accept the existence of his own degenerate, etc. This kind of intelligent creature is under the personal control of Sumu, and it will also perish in the process of abyss due to disharmony of attributes or discord of heart and nature. But these are just a few of the intelligent beings. What he wants is most of it. Slowly, Under the control of Sumu, the concentration of the abyss and abyss demonic energy in these isolation areas increased little by little, when most of the intelligent creatures had adapted to the current concentration and began to transform. He continued to increase the concentration of the abyss in the isolation area. The concentration of abyss aura and abyss magic energy. Slowly, the first species began to abyss. The ordinary people with the largest number and the weakest endurance started the abyss first. No matter what their previous ethnic group was, after accepting the erosion of abyss and abyss demonic energy, their complexion began to dim, their hair color began to turn gray, and magic lines began to appear on their bodies. Finally, these human beings of different nationalities will all be transformed into a common race, the Abyss Devil. After the commoners, there are professionals. After the professional, there is the hero. Under Sumu's meticulous control, most of the civilians have completed this transformation. Not to mention those professionals and heroes who are more powerful. Time flies. More and more civilians have completed the abyss, and more professionals and heroes have completed the abyss. Still originating from the particularity of the abyss world. Once these human beings have completed the abyss, they will be transformed from pure human beings into abyss demons. They will involuntarily be loyal to the abyss world and to Sumu. The stronger the strength, the more so. Once you enter the abyss, you will sink forever. This is not empty talk. Once you accept the abyss and complete the abyss, you will be part of the abyss world forever and ever. You will not betray, you will not leave, you will not betray, you will not be able to leave. From the point of view of other beings in the main material world, isn't this the eternal sinking? Of course. Not just humans. Humans are only the race with the largest number of abysses, not the only race. Somewhere in the abyss world, in a vast forest that had already been transformed into abyss, the abyssification of a group of elves gradually ended. Their white skins became dull, their dazzling eyes became pitch black, and the emerald green patterns on their bodies, which represented the love of nature, also turned into magic patterns at this moment. From elf, degenerate to dark elf. These elves who originally danced with the forest, after degenerating into dark elves, still live in harmony with the enchanted forest. Their strength has not been weakened by the abandonment of the elves and the god of elves, but has increased. Humans and elves are just one example. Humans are transformed into abyss demons after abyssification. Elves transformed into dark elves after abyssalization. Dwarves transformed into dark dwarves or gray dwarves after abyssification. The barbarians, after the abyss, were transformed into the abyss barbarians, and even the beasts. Unconsciously, it just devoured a main material world, and the pattern of the abyss 100 tribes has also initially formed. 004 level sword. The real plane of death. More than 10 days in a row. Under Sumu's careful control, all the intelligent creatures that were brought into the abyss world were transformed. Is the success rate 90%. In other words, 90% of the hundreds of millions of creatures who originally lived in the Anjuan continent survived to complete the abyssal transformation and became the abyss species in the abyss world. These intelligent creatures will be one of Sumu's cards in the future. After completing the abyss, they can become followers of Sumu. Living in the abyss world continuously provides him with the power of belief, which is converted into free points and finally promotes the further growth of the abyss world. This is a perfect closed loop. If in the future, the level of the abyss world will become higher and higher, the abyss world will become wider and wider, the energy level will become higher and higher, and there will be more and more intelligent creatures living in this world. When Agnes and others have also stepped into the peak of the sanctuary and even entered the demigod realm, Sumu can even separate some of these intelligent creatures living in the abyss world and believe in Agnes and others for the sake of it. They provide the power of faith. This is another closed loop. It can be said. In addition to consuming so much time and resources that a demigod is desperate, the road to becoming a god of the dimension demon is almost perfect. Once he reaches the level that Sumu is now, he has enough qualifications to sit and watch the clouds rise and disappear, and everything is self-sufficient and not false. As long as the specific coordinates of the abyss world in the void ocean are not discovered by other gods, he can even grow old. Of course, Sumu didn't want to go on like this. The battle of the gods in the future is the battle of the Great Tao. If he has so many advantages, he is still just stubborn, and he will be reborn in vain without using this opportunity to madly improve his strength. The next thing, don't have to worry about Sumu himself. The prototype of the Abyss 100 tribes has already formed. Next, it is also necessary to establish a new teleportation formation between the settlements of the races and the cities to connect the dozen or so Abyss races. Then, build temples, shape idols, and form a belief system with Sumu as the goal of belief in the Abyss world. All of this will naturally be done by Argus. In the Advanced Sanctuary, Argus became Sumu's chief steward. Even Willis, the Lich King who was only one step away from the sanctuary, was subservient to Argus. The Lich King, the Great Lich, the Lich, and the Corpse Witch, the entire system of the undead with the highest level of intelligence, all under the command of Argus. When Argus was given a bit of the origin of the Abyss world by Sumu, he became an Abyss Lord and could use the power of the Abyss world to a certain extent. Walking and teleporting at will in the Abyss world has also become the instinct of the big housekeeper. For him, accomplishing this is easy. When Argus, the big butler, has established the entire belief system, Sumu only needs to cast his own plane projection in the temples and statues. You can continuously harvest the power of faith from the Abyss race. With the current number of Abyss races, the power of belief in a single harvest may not be much, but this is a continuous process, accumulated over the years. The power of faith provided by these Abyss races is even more powerful than the power of faith he harvested in the Holy Light Empire. At the same time, the Abyss world's devouring of the Anduin continent has also ended. Since then, not only is there no longer a main material world called Anduin continent in the game world, but there is no such server as Anduin continent on the server list of players in the real world. Devouring a complete main material world, the level of the Abyss world also soared. It is also a low-energy world, and the energy concentration between them is also different. For example, the energy level of the just-born Abyss world is lower than that of the Anduin world that has existed for countless years. Devouring such a main material world, the level of the Abyss world is not just as simple as upgrading from a small world, level 1, to a small world, level 2. Rather, it is calculated based on the energy level of the main material world being swallowed. After swallowing the Anduin continent, the level of the Abyss world was directly upgraded from the small world, level 1, to the small world, level 5, a full increase of 4 levels. If it can devour a main material world with the highest energy concentration among the low-level worlds, perhaps the level of the Abyss world can be directly upgraded from a small world, level 1, to a small world, level 10. According to this rule, if the Abyss world can devour a high-level world, its level will soar to the level of medium-sized world in an instant. Only, it can't. When he is still at the small world level, the Abyss world can only devour the low-energy level world. When it is advanced to the medium-sized world, it can devour the high-energy level world. Otherwise, as long as the Anreal continent is swallowed up, wouldn't the Abyss world rise to the sky in one step, from a small world to a medium-sized world? The plane erosion of the Anreal continent still needs to be suppressed. Sumu estimates. After devouring 2 or 3 low-level main material worlds, the Abyss world can be smoothly promoted from a small world to a medium-sized world. At that time, he can drive the Abyss world to erode and swallow the Anreal continent and bring it into his control. The first plane erosion is over. All intelligent creatures have also completed the Abyss. The next thing is naturally completed by his subordinates. Sumu also released the fusion with the Abyss world and returned to his own body in the Abyss Hall. 3 days left. It was the time when the Dark Council convened. In the last 3 days, he really couldn't do anything. He just sat in his own position and adjusted his state, hoping to participate in the Dark Council in the best state after 3 days. 3 days passed in a flash. When the day of the Dark Council came, Sumu took out the invitation letter condensed with the origin of the plane of death. This invitation letter is not only condensed from the origin of the plane of death, but also contains the coordinates of the plane of death. No matter where you are, as long as you hold this invitation, any sanctuary can open the passage to the plane of death. And even dimensional demon gods like Sumu, or those demigods and evil gods, can all enter the plane of death in the form of their own body instead of energy incarnation. Said before, the world instinctively rejects such powerful beings as demons, gods, and even demigods and evil gods. There are only two exceptions. First, the world is a broken world. The laws and rules in it have been broken, and the instincts of the world have disappeared, so naturally the gods and demons cannot be excluded from entering. In short, it's a dead world. Second, the advanced plane. Corresponding to the promotion level of the abyss world, the small world, the medium world, and the large world correspond to the low energy level world, the high energy level world, and the top world, respectively. Further up is the advanced plane. The reason why this kind of world is higher than the top-level main material world is called by plane, because these worlds are all worlds directly under the gods. For example, the plane of light belongs directly to the god of light. As the highest level of the main material world, and the main material world directly under the god of light, only the believers of the god of light, as well as various plants and animals with light attributes, live in this world and nothing else. The laws and rules of the entire world have been modified, the instincts of the world have been eliminated, and even the god of light can endure the descent in person. Such a high-level plane can naturally withstand the entry of other gods and demons. The same goes for other gods. Elf plane, dwarven plane, dragon plane, etc. If it is said that each of the main material worlds and the intelligent beings of the main material world are all believers competing for the gods, then the higher planes that directly belong to the gods are the basic discs of the gods. The high-level planes directly under him are enough to maintain their existence. The competition for beliefs in other main material worlds only makes them stronger. Of course, not every god has its own high-level plane. Because in addition to the instinct of the world, in addition to the self-protection of the world, all the protection and development of these advanced planes come from the gods. Not powerful enough. Even if such a high-level plane is created, it is only the object of plundering and harvesting by other gods. The plane of death is such an advanced plane. Not only a high-level plane, but a high-level plane that has long been broken. At this point, Sumu had seen it when he first entered the plane of death. Such a world, such a shattered high-level plane, can naturally allow the dimension demon god Sumu, as well as those many demigods and evil gods to enter. Holding the invitation letter with black as the bottom and dark gold as the edge, Sumu swiped lightly, and a dark space crack appeared in front of him. The almost endless breath of death and darkness continuously poured out from the plane of death and flowed into the abyss world. Only, as soon as these death auras and dark auras poured into the abyss world, they were eroded and assimilated by the abyss aura and abyss demonic energy that spread throughout the abyss world and became part of the abyss world. Going to the plane of death this time, what he has to face may be the existence of the demigod realm. Not to mention the sanctuaries under his command, the kings, even the gluttonous insect king was taken down by Sumu and left in the abyss world. Go alone. The passage to the plane of death has been opened. Without hesitation, holding the invitation letter, Sumu stepped out and entered the dark space crack. And after Sumu entered, the space crack also disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Entering the space crack, Sumu's figure immediately appeared in the plane of death. It is not like entering for the first time, and it takes a long countercurrent to enter. Dead world. Broken sky. Broken earth. The various undead wandering in the shattered earth, the terrifying monsters wandering in the void were not much different from the plane of death he saw for the first time. Only, at the beginning, he plunged into the plane of death under the condition of ignorance. Now he is invited to come to the plane of death as a dimension demon and the 14th speaker of the Dark Council. Sumu appeared on an apparently revised floating island. And at the moment when Sumu's figure appeared, a faint blue soul fire floating on this floating island jumped violently. Immediately after, a faint blue figure slowly emerged in front of him. The fire of darkness welcomed the arrival of His Majesty the Abyss. Dark Fire. That is, once the first consul of the Undead Empire. See you again. This time, the dark fire did not appear in front of Sumu in the form of the energy incarnation of the human form outlined by the dark blue soul fire. Instead, in the form of a human figure condensed with a large amount of fire, such an image appeared in front of Sumu. Australian fire. This kind of existence generally exists in the head of the undead as the basis for the existence of the undead. And in this plane of death, fire is also a race. An alternative undead race. On this floating island, such soul fires are not uncommon. Moreover, these soul fires are like ordinary undead races, and they also have different levels and different ranks. Among these many soul fires, the dark fire is obviously the top existence. Upper Sanctuary. A dimensional demon with a large plane. These two realms are the same as Sumu's previous judgment. At this time, standing in front of Sumu, dark fire appeared in the form of a human who was shorter than him. The breath belonging to the upper sanctuary emanated, a small gap would appear on the blue skin from time to time, and then a faint blue soul fire emanated and burned quietly. As if this first consul is like an elf born from the soul fire. During the last encounter, the dark fire had already known Sumu's identity. Therefore, when the Dimension Demon God came, the dark fire came at the first time and led Sumu to the place where the Dark Council held a meeting. Under the abyss, please follow me. Nod slightly. After observing the dark fire for a while, Sumu followed behind the upper sanctuary and headed towards the lower level of the death plane, the place where the Dark Council is held, at the lowest level of the death plane. Yes, Your Majesty the Abyss. The bottom world of the plane of death, 640, belongs to the flame of my lord's wisdom and is guarded by the mountain giant, the crown of the giant. Usually the bottom layer is not open. Only when the Dark Council is held, the bottom world will be open. Let the speakers and members of the Dark Council go to discuss matters together. Mountain Giant. Without further explanation, Sumu knew that this was another demigod. And judging by its name, this demigod is clearly the owner of the huge mountain-like arm that he and Nefarian encountered when he and Nefarian first entered the plane of death. He is also the one who stands among the many floating continents with a height of several thousand meters. Huge figure. The Fire of Wisdom should be a demigod. The Mountain Giant is another demigod. The Fire of Wisdom occupies the bottom world of the death plane. The Mountain Giant guards the bottom world, and also guards the entire death plane. A lot of information circulated in his mind, and the outline of the plane of death gradually formed in Sumu's mind. The floating island where Sumu appeared was originally located in the lower layer of the plane of death. From the lower level of the death plane to the lowest level of the death plane, with the strength of the dark fire and Sumu, it will not take too long. During this process, Sumu was also carefully looking at the environment at the lower level of the death plane. The breath of death and darkness here is more intense than the upper layers of the death plane. The difference is, a huge part of the undead living here are the soul fire race that has the same root as the dark fire, but the number of undead of other races is much less. On the floating continents and floating islands in the path, there are many soul fires at the legendary level and even the sanctuary level. Visible. This undead race that Sumu has never seen before is the most powerful undead race in the plane of death. In addition to soul fire, there are all kinds of terrifying monsters. Hundreds of feet of giant rotten floating giant whales, ghost trees occupying an entire island, tiny bony fish groups that invite swimming in the void like swimming fish, terrifying ghosts that cover half of the floating continent, etc. These monsters, or legends, or sanctuaries, even have reached the peak of the sanctuary. But since they're called monsters, the biggest difference between these powerful beings and the undead in the plane of death is that they basically have no consciousness of birth, only the instinct of hunting. If you encounter strong people who break into the plane of death without permission, these monsters will naturally swarm up and devour those strong people. But as long as there is a trace of the aura from the evil god, or a trace of the original aura from the plane of death, these monsters will automatically ignore it and exclude it from the scope of prey. This is also the reason why, when he was in the Empire of the Undead, he could freely explore the plane of death with a trace of the evil spirit aura from the Dark Titan given by the Dark Fire. Cthulhu Breath. Death Certificate. As well as the invitation letter that Sumu later received, all have the function of shielding monsters from sensing and hunting. Of course, with Sumu's current strength, even without these credentials, he is enough to ignore the threat posed by these monsters. At this time, only demigods, evil gods, and real gods are qualified to be his opponents. All the way down. After passing through the dense fog composed of the purest breath of death and darkness, an extremely vast continent appeared in front of Sumu. A continent. Very vast. This is normal. What is abnormal is that on this dark and dead continent there is a building as huge as a mountain and like a gladiatorial arena. How huge! Standing in the high sky of this dead continent, Sumu glanced over and his vision was completely occupied by this huge building. Inside the building, there are rows of black stone chairs. The outermost stone chair is the highest, and the further inward the stone chair is, the lower it is. When he reached the center of the building, which was at the bottom of the building, a huge stone table surrounded by 13 extraordinarily huge black stone chairs appeared in front of Sumu's eyes. 13 stone chairs. Each of them is hundreds of meters tall, as if it were prepared for a giant that stands above the ground. In the center of the stone table surrounded by 13 huge stone chairs, there is an altar with a radius of about 1 kilometer. In the center of this altar, a blue-purple soul fire was burning quietly. When Sumu arrived, there were already 10 figures sitting on the 13 stone chairs. The countless stone chairs belonging to the members of the Dark Council around the stone chair are also filled with many strong men from the Dark Camp. There are also many members of the Dark Council, led by the humanoid soul fire like the Dark Fire, and took their seats on the stone chairs. The stronger the council member, the stronger the humanoid soul fire as the leader. But every strong person who is qualified to participate in this meeting is at least the median sanctuary. Countless stone chairs. When Sumu's eyes swept across the venue, the number of these dark camp powerhouses who reached the median sanctuary alone was counted in thousands. As he guessed, the power of the Dark Council is far beyond his imagination. Arrive in the sky above the venue. Darkfire's footsteps stopped. He pointed to the 13th stone chair in the center of the venue and said respectfully, "Under the abyss, the 13th stone chair is your seat." Originally, there were only 12 chairperson seats. After that, under the fire of my Lord's wisdom, I personally took action and turned the chairperson seat into 13 seats. Very sorry. With the identity and status of Your Excellency Abyss, it was originally far more than the 13th stone chair. However, every speaker's seat was won by himself under the witness of other speakers. So without the knowledge of other speakers, my lord can only place you on the 13th stone chair. 13 speakers with 12 stone chairs. 14 speakers have 13 stone chairs. This is not a miscalculation, because one of the speakers does not need a stone chair. The speaker. It is the Lord of the Fire of Darkness, the Fire of Wisdom. It was the blue-purple soul fire that was quietly burning on the altar in the center of the venue. As for the ranking, Sumu didn't care. If you are not strong enough, you will sit on the first stone chair, and other speakers will not think highly of you. If you are strong enough, You will be sitting on the last stone chair, and no one will dare to look down on yourself. Strength is respected. In the plane of death, in the dark world, this sentence is carried out from beginning to end. With a slight nod to the dark fire, Sumu stepped forward and crossed a distance of thousands of kilometers and appeared on the 13th stone chair from the sky above this continent. The appearance of Sumu attracted the attention of many speakers. The existence that can become the speaker is at least a demigod above the sanctuary. Such an existence, just staring at him, is full of coercion. If the strength is not enough, the stare of the speaker alone is enough to suppress him on the stone chair. Facing these gazes, Sumu seemed to have not seen it, and his expression was indifferent. He slightly changed his body shape, found a more comfortable posture, leaned on the stone chair, and waited for the meeting to start. 13 stone chairs. All are 100 meters in size. Such a chair is obviously not suitable for every speaker. But the existence that can become the speaker is at least a demigod. The size of the body changes, it is a very simple thing for them. You can adapt to the size of the stone chair by changing your shape a little. So is Sumu. Although his body is still the peak sanctuary. But as a dimensional demon god, he has the experience of incarnating the form of a demon god. He changed a little and also adapted his body to the size of the stone chair and leaned on the stone chair. 10 figures. Plus Sumu is 11. At this time, except for the first and third stone chairs, there were still no figures, and the rest of the stone chairs were already filled with demigods and evil gods of all shapes and forms. While the 10 demigods and evil gods were watching and observing Sumu, Sumu was also carefully looking at the 10 demigods and evil gods. No doubt, the higher the seat, the stronger the strength of the demigod or evil god. And the top 5 speakers in the Dark Council are among the demigods and evil gods, and they are also the most powerful beings. For example, the sturdy figure sitting in the second seat, just the breath it exudes, makes Sumu feel like he is facing the true god. And this breath, Sumu, is extraordinarily familiar. Dark Titan. The aura emanating from the sturdy figure in the second seat is clearly the aura that Sumu once sensed, belonging to the Dark Titan.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.